Good morning, friends. Shavua Tov, V'Katavach. I hope that this finds everybody well. Today is an important day on the calendar, both in the Jewish calendar and in the secular calendar. It's the 25th of the month of Elul, which this year falls out on September 11th. The 25th of Elul is an important day because in the Genesis narrative, there are 6 days of creation before Adam and Eve are created. And Adam and Eve are created on the first of Tishrei, which becomes Rosh Hashanah, which this year falls out on Shabbos. And so what that means is that the process of the first day of creation was today on the 25th day of the month of Elul. And so this today represents the beginning of the process of creation, which of course creation, a planet without people, doesn't fulfill God's purpose of creation. It's not about having a planet or an earth. It's about having a place that's inhabitable for humanity. And so in conversations around climate change, we don't have to worry about the earth. The earth inevitably will be fine. It will correct itself. It'll get colder. It'll get hotter. But the part that we care about is us being able to live here, us being able to inhabit this earth. And that's not so simple. So it's an important day to reflect on the physical world being here to support the spiritual world. But the ultimate goal of creation is humanity, that people become are the center of creation from the very beginning. And it's an important day to reflect on how we treat each other. The Ramchal, for those who are following along in Mussar Sharm and Sefaria, we're in the 19th chapter in the 3rd line. And we're speaking about piety, the root of which is chesed, kindness. And there's different types of kindnesses. There are kindnesses which are limited to the physical plane. A person is hungry and you give them food. That is an act of kindness. You're filling a need. It's interesting that the word in Hebrew for lacking is the word chaser. If something is lacking, it's chaser. It's not complete. It's incomplete. It's missing something. The word for kindness is chesed. It's just the difference between the resh and the dalid. It's the same thing I think we spoke last week about the word acher, other, and echad, one. That when we replace the resh, which is just kind of curved, with the dalid, which is not curved, so then we convert the perception of other to the perception of united and one, and so too when it comes to deficiencies and the voids, that which is chassid, the chesroiness, so we change that with chesed. Chesed is kindness. So and the source of piety. So this is what he writes. The first subdivision of the first subdivision, because he said that there's between a person and the divine is between people. So the first subdivision of the first subdivision, namely piety indeed between a person and God, its matter is for a person to fulfill the mitzvos, the commandments, in all of their fine details to the furthest extent of one's ability. Our sages of blessed memory call these the remnants of a mitzvah. They said, the remnants of a mitzvah, this is Gemara in Sukkah 38a, the remnants of the mitzvah prevent divine punishment, which we'll unpack here in a second. For even though the body of a mitzvah is fulfilled, without them and one has already discharged the obligation, nevertheless, this is sufficient for the general masses of the Jewish people. Right? A person is supposed to fulfill the commandments. You check the box, I did the thing. I was supposed to make a blessing, I made a blessing. Supposed to light Shabbos candles, lit Shabbos candles. But those who are pious must only increase fulfillment in the mitzvah and not omit any detail whatsoever of them. So this, of course, requires an explanation, because if a person, let's say, has a custom to light 2 candles Friday afternoon, so you lit 2 candles. How do you do that better? How do you fulfill that mitzvah? It's a binary. You lit Shabbos candles, you didn't light Shabbos candles. So in one of the commentaries, I just want to read to you in the Hebrew Note Translate. It's very powerful. The language of the intentionality. What do we do with our hearts, which of course is at the core of the fulfillment of a mitzvah. It's not about the action. God doesn't, as much as we talk about Judaism being a religion of action, which is true, and it's not enough to love peace, we have to pursue it. The actions are themselves kind of the body of a commandment, but bodies are on some level physical, they're external, they are the vessel to hold the intentionality of the heart. So this is what one of the commentators here writes as follows: Ela shehikir sheha'ava shenimtzas boy hi ava l'tzorich gilui elikos. So when a person recognizes that the love that is found is the love that requires revelation, that mitzvahs, commandments, become vehicles to be able to reveal the love that a person has in their heart. Lo shechas v'shalom hu oiseh dvarim min hashefa ulachot. It's not that a person is meant to act externally in the world. V'nasan lehem oichel b'li ava. And in his example, it's about giving somebody food. Nasan lehem oichel, to give somebody food b'li ava, without love. That's not a mitzvah. It's not the root of the mitzvah. Ha'ava hi shoyrish hachesed b'poel. And it's a powerful line. Literally, it means, in the translation, that love is the root of kindness in action. When we think about actions of kindness, often we think about it in terms of the shift from there's a need, there's a resource, there's a lacking, and so we'll do this aspect of kindness. That's good for the world. It's good for the world that people have access to resources. But when we think about our spiritual development, when we think about the divine peace of the universe, it's not about people not suffering. It's about people feeling the love for each other and feeling the love for the divine. The idea of a person doing a mitzvah wholeheartedly as some sort of protection from the divine in terms of retribution, in terms of punishment. Punishment within Judaism is not seen as the utility. It's not, God's not a vengeful God in that we do something wrong, we need to be punished. God is a kind, forgiving, merciful God that wants us to take responsibility for our actions and our inactions, and to recognize that there are consequences for those. And so the idea that we suffer is not because God is the source of suffering. God forbid. God is the source of kindness and love and all things pleasurable, all things good. But we make choices, and there are consequences to our choices. If what we didn't make a difference, then and if we didn't have the freedom of will and choice, so then we would be like angels or animals, that there isn't this place for us to be held accountable because we either are going to do it or we're not going to do it. But it's not because we're choosing, it's because we're forced. So the one thing that we offer God are our choices. And so that's why they're meaningful. So when a person does a mitzvah, a commandment, and it's filled with love, and there's a revelation of the love that a person has for humanity, for the divine, so then God is revealed, and if God is revealed, so there is no space for negativity, there is no space for the brokenness, there is no space for any sort of suffering, because everything that is bad in the world, tradition teaches, is the direct result of God's hiddenness that we caused. If you go back to the very beginning in the garden, there was no suffering, there was no pain, there was no hunger, there was no deficiencies. It was literally the paradise of the Garden of Eden. God said no, we didn't listen, and so we're dealing with those consequences. The first temple, we were told, was destroyed because of the 3 cardinal sins of idolatry, adultery, and murder. And for that, there was 70 years as a process of us trying to rectify and to fix and to work on ourselves. And then the second temple has now been destroyed for over 2,000 years. And the reason that's given is because of blatant hatred, because we're not nice to each other. We can't have a house or nice things spiritually if we can't treat each other nicely. And so it's not that not being nice to each other is somehow worse than idolatry and adultery and murder, that one got 70 years and now we have this punishment of 2,000 years. It's not a punishment, it's a consequence, it's a reality. When we're not nice to each other, God says, I'm not showing up. I'm not going to be in this place of hate. It doesn't feel good for me. It's not a safe space. If you can't see the divine in each other, then you can't see the divine. You're erasing my identity. So we know that when Abraham, who is the one person of the who's seen as kind of the man of kindness, we have actually only one kind of explicit story in the Hebrew Bible about his kindness, and it's inviting guests and feeding them. And the rabbis there say that it's not just that he fed them physically, but rather he engaged spiritually. The rabbis tell us that after each meal, they would say, "Oh wow, thank you, and thank your wife, and this is so delicious, and I so appreciate it." And Avram would say, like, why are you thanking me? I didn't create the animals. I didn't create the grain. I just took the natural resources that God created and, changed them, rearranged them to create these dishes. If you really want to give thanks for what you ate, you have to give thanks to the one that created it all. And that is the source of monotheism. So even though it was a physical delivery of inviting guests and giving food, it was motivated and it was informed and inspired by Abraham's desire to provide love for the world. That if you really believe in the divine, then you want to help people. You want to remove the suffering, because the suffering is itself human, as a result of human consequence. It's the consequences of humans' choices and deficiencies. And so the more that we offer kindness to the world, the more that we reveal the goodness and the potential of helping each other by revealing the divine in each other and our connectivity, so that not only is there not categories of others, but we're all one, that we're also able to shift from this posture of deficiencies where people are suffering, and the inequality where you have people who have so much more and the others who can't, or who are going to sleep at night hungry. So then it all becomes unified in terms of the networking of the needs and the resources. And so now there are no deficiencies, but there are just acts of kindness. But on a deeper level, it's not that people aren't hungry anymore. It's that I care that people aren't hungry and that nobody should be hungry. And so we're going to provide the kind of the rectification of the brokenness that we created by fixing it. Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. And this is true about our own selves in terms of our character traits. Fixing who we are is becoming the perfect beings we were before we became imperfect. That when God created this world, there were no deficiencies. The only thing that we needed, that God wanted, was our prayers. God wanted things from us that God should be seen for who God is. And so we failed. Lots of reasons why we failed. Maybe Adam wanted to feel more relevant by breaking things because it was so perfect, to then feel useful and trying to fix it, as opposed to recognizing that we can always build on the places of goodness. It's not just about thinking about the deficiencies and how do we feel them, but what the Ramchal is saying is that even if you're already doing the commandments, you're checking all of the boxes. You wake up, a person wakes up in the morning, the first thing they say is Meida Ani, thank you Hashem. It's interesting that the order there is Meida Ani, that we translated it as thanks or acknowledgement. They're connected. Moida means to acquiesce. I'm moida, I acknowledge this. But moda is also the same language as toda, thank you. But we don't say ani moda, I acquiesce, but rather moida ani. That there's an acquisition, there's an acknowledgement from within of myself. That it's not I-centered, but rather I am the one who's going to be doing this thing. So it's not about me in terms of centering me, but rather it's coming from this place of the ani, which of course in Elul is what we say every day, ani l'doidi v'doidi li. I am to my beloved is to me, that everything that I'm doing is meant to come from a place of love. That ani l'doidi, all I want to do is come closer to God. And how do we come closer to God? By being more pious. And what does it mean to be more pious? It means to do more acts of kindness. And it's not just to do acts of kindness, but it's allowing the love that we have for the divine, for each other, because they're all connected, to be able to express itself, to break free from the constraints of being hidden the way in which the divine is hidden. And the more that we reveal the divine through the goodness of the world, the more that the divine is revealed, and the more that there's revealed kindness and goodness in the world. In the moments in Jewish history where we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, taking care of each other and being kind, so God shows up and God says, I can help you with this. Well, I have unlimited resources. I will partner. And in those places and in those times, things were perfect. There was nothing that was lacking. In the desert, we don't need the natural resources of a desert that aren't necessarily all that vast, because God will provide a cloud by day. There's a fire at night. There's clothing that doesn't get worn out and it grows with a person. There's the man that tastes like whatever we want it to be, where it's perfect in terms of our dietary needs. There's no shortage of resources in partnership with the divine. God created everything. God is constantly creating everything. So why are there people that are hungry? Because we're deficient. We are not feeling our interconnectivity for each other. Because if we really felt it, that there's enough resources to feed the world. There's more than enough to go around. So if there's more than enough to go around, then why is it people suffering? Because we don't care enough internally to be able to express the divine goodness, particularly if we recognize that God is the source of everything. So who is it on me? How can I justify not sharing, not whatever the resources, whether it's a smile, whether it's being kind, really just reaching out to people, making sure whatever we have in terms of what we can contribute to the world. It's not that we need to contribute from the world. It's that we should feel this love and this gratitude that I'm not doing enough because I want to show my love for the divine. I want to show my love for humanity and humanity's suffering, and I care about humanity. And so I want to be able to figure out how to get all of this love out. And that's what the Ramchal says is the purpose of all of the commandments, the purpose of the entire Torah, all of our customs, all of the commandments is to be able to express the love we have that's internal and to be able to get it out into the world, because it's not enough. Love in the heart is great, but if people don't know you love them, if the world is not feeling the love, so then it's an untapped resource. And so an invitation, we're out of time for today, but an invitation for today, when we think about the consequences of hate, when we think about the impact of all of the pain and suffering now 22 years later from acts of hate, if it exists on the spectrum in a negative way, it also exists on the spectrum in a positive way. And what are opportunities that we can allow the love that we have for humanity internally to be able to get manifest, that 22 years later people are still talking about it, about the acts of love and the acts of kindness. And you see these on days, unfortunately, of mass tragedy. There are people who show up and are driven by that love. And so it's there's something powerful in being able to see the contrast between hate manifested and love manifested. And we want to live in a world where there's only love. Everybody has a wonderful day. Kultiv.